You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman, exclusively on ABC Amba TV.
Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman. My name is Dr. Patience Abiedu, and I am going to be the sole person on this program today. And we will have a program for about 45 minutes to an hour to talk about the CPDM. CPDM. But before I begin on that subject, let me seize this opportunity to appreciate and thank our ASA, Ambazonia State Army, who have consistently defended our territory and defended our people. I also want to salute our friends and family members residing in neighboring La République du Cameroon, also those who are in other parts of the world, Nigeria in particular, Ghana, that are refugees that have gone to this parts of the world because of the war. We should not forget this for 1 minute. Because of the war that Biya launched on our people on November 30th of 2017. So today's topic really has to do with CPDM, the strategy that they have had to conserve power from generation to generation. I'm going to be going through this manual, and this topic has come up in the past on this show, but I think it is time to revisit it because of what has recently transpired in neighboring La République du Cameroon. They had an election where two main players were, the runners, Issa Chiruma and Paul Biya. And of course, the incumbent Paul Biya was declared the victor by their by the Constitutional Council. And it is troubling. For several reasons, but it doesn't really concern us, those of us from Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. Although it's always important to talk about things that happen in different parts of the world. So before I delve into this material, I want to say that before the elections took place, a lot of things were happening in different parts of the world. If you go and look up CPDM activity, you will be shocked. I saw this. Let me list a bunch of things that I came across on YouTube. CPDM USA campaign series, where they emphasize that the reason Paul Biya is supposed to be the best president, and the reason we really need to, or they need to continue to vote him as president, because he's the leader that has brought culture, heritage, and national identity. Culture, heritage, and natural identity. I want to come back to this when we talk about what is important for a nation, what is important for a nation that is developing or even developed. The other things that you come across is CPDM USA campaign series, the vision for the future. There was CPDM campaign in Bali, CPDM USA grassroots campaign at the front of Ngujo's Palace. CPDM National Party unveils its campaigns team ahead of 2025. CPDM Northwest launches presidential campaign. CPDM USA campaign task force to re-elect Paul Biya. CPDM FACO 1 galvanizes multitudes ahead of presidential elections. CPDM July 16 campaign circular roadmap to October 12. There was also CPDM presidential campaign in Douala. CPDM launches presidential campaign in the Southwest Cameroons. CPDM launches a national campaign across 360 communities to support President Biya. And then President Biya rolls out campaign modalities for CPDM. And then also CPDM campaign launches in Gaoundere. And the goal is to bring peace, stability, and development. So let's get into the program about what this strategy for conservation of power from generation to generation by Paul Biya entails. I'm going to read sections of the manual or the manuscript and then talk about what I think. And this was drafted in, it says, for the events of September 22, 2020, including the nationwide peaceful march launched by MRC leader Maurice Kamto for a review of the electoral system and an end to the war in the Northwest and Southwest, the forces of law and order must carry out arrests of Bamilekes with a small mixture of other tribes only. Each member of our tribe must initiate one of his or her children to whom he or she must pass on this protocol in the form of a confidential inheritance to be passed from father to son for all eternity. Please know that I have no hatred for any tribe, not even the like father, like son tribe. Let's talk about this. So the goal of this CPDM family is to make sure that they have people from different areas that are corrupted into this family with the intent of keeping power amongst a few from generation to generation. Let's ask the question, why will a 92-year-old person who is in most likelihood mentally underserved, mentally inept, who doesn't have the knowledge of what is going on around himself, why should such a person maintain power? And when you listen to some of those videos on their campaign route, you hear people that are knowledgeable make sentences like, they rather stay with the that they know, even though this person has done nothing to improve their lives, than to venture out with somebody who is unknown, who could bring more to the nation. Let me go to the general provisions of this manuscript. General provisions, ethnic groups. Who are we? Or what is our tribe? Article 1. We are fortunate to belong to the tribe of national initiates, for we are a composition of all tribes. So this will mean that there are individuals in this family, Onjangi house, who may come from all parts of the land that have been initiated to make sure that power stays with CPDM. Article 2, our preservation of power requires that we be replaced by our descendants. And for that to happen, they must be almost the only ones in the major schools of political management in the country. So this tells us that eventually, when it comes time that Paul Biya is really gone, when that time comes, according to this, the person that will take over will be one that has already been initiated in this their family to continue the works led by the father to make sure that power stays only within that structure. Article 3. The central and southern regions contain a multitude of ethnic groups. However, we must do our utmost to ensure that the whole country considers them as a single ethnic group. The Betis, the Ikangs, or the Bulu. These three words must be imposed as synonyms. So the Betis, according to this, are similar, are the same as the Ikangs, are the same as the Bulus. So when we have that picture in mind, then it means that they are united and believe in this doctrine. Article 4. Our tactics must be to make the Betis believe that they are blessed by providence because so many of them are amongst us, which is true. So many Betis are in this CPDM, and so they are the ruling ethnic group in the country. They have the power. Number 5. The Betis are the greatest victims of our policy. In the future, they are likely to be perceived as an ethnic group of thieves and plunderers of the public, the ethnic group of the lazy and those who rig elections. So because they are being put across as the leaders, as a leading ethnic group, they carry that negative connotation of lazy people, plunderers, people that are just consuming the wealth of the nation and don't care about it, while they have some key people that are instrumental in making us see that picture. Article 6. So that the Betis don't suspect us or revolt against us, we will have to invent a Bamileke plot that threatens them individually and collectively. This will enable us to divert their attention. So they are so smart about how to cause some division. This phrase, divide and rule, is so true that you cause some sort of division amongst groups, then they focus on that while you continue with your main agenda. And that's what this document is saying. Article 7. We know that the real Betis have no hatred for the Bamilekes, but will lose power if the truth is made public. The alienation of the Betis by asserting that they hold power and that the Bamilekes want to seize it is a priority for us. The use of anti-Bamileke tribalism is a choice we have to make in spite of ourselves. The Betis have no chance but to support us, even at the risk of being seen as the tribalist. So, this affirms what happened when Kamto won the presidential election a few years ago. Kamto won, he was arrested, but they made it in such a way that it was Bamileke against Betis. And so, because of that dynamic, because of that, it was possible for the Bamilekes to be shoved to the side and the Betis continue doing what they do, being those in power. The Northerners. Now, this is going to be interesting, knowing that Isa Chiruma, a Northerner, by all information that we have, really was the winner of the last election that took place on October 12th. And of course, we were all not so shocked that Biya was declared the winner. So let's talk about the Northerners. We must do our utmost to ensure that the greater south of the country understand that the greater north forms a single ethnic group and that the majority of it is Muslim. So that is another way of dividing. The northerners are Muslims and the greater part of the country, they're probably Christians. So divide and rule. May the idea of a revenge by northerners for the coup d'etat of April 6, 1984 forever haunt the souls of our people. So this is a reminder that the coup that happened in 1984, led by northerners, should always be at their forefront in their thinking process to never happen again. And if that were to be the case, they should never trust the northerners. They should never give the northerners the opportunity to be leaders. And we've seen that come to happen. Indeed, that coup was avoidable, but it was an opportunity to rid the country of nostalgia for the ex-president, who is Ahmadu Ahidjo, and above all, to decimate the intelligentsia of the far north for our own conservation of power. So, it's almost as if there's supposed to be power between the northerners and the Bulus, where Paul Biya is. So there's this fight for leadership. So you had Ahidjo, who was a northerner, and then you have Biya, and then another northerner was coming back to take place. So I guess their country, La Republic of Cameroon, is supposed to be governed only by these two. But when Ahidjo left and Biya took over, this CPDM is insisting that only those who are in this CPDM family will ever be in power. And Biya is in power because he's still alive. And it will not be surprising to me that when Biya leaves this earth, he will still be alive for a long time, because you remember, there's been times that Biya is not seen for months and months and still is the president. So when that time comes, he will still be the president till the CPDM, the family, decides who they want to put in office. Continuing with the northerners, any visible politician from the far north must enter into an alliance with us or disappear. And let me repeat, any visible politician from the far north must enter into an alliance with us or disappear. Now, one would think that Issa Chuma, who was part of their family for so long, knows all this. Yet he ran an election, he ran a campaign, put his name there, and won. And yet, because of whatever is happening in that inner cycle, which he understands, he is not the president. Biya is the president. Article 11. The case of Mamadou Moutar, vice president of the MRC, should be of the utmost concern to us. As part of the plan to destroy the political party of this Bamileke, who dares to stand in our way, we must negotiate a strategy with Mamadou Moutar. So they have a way of co-opting those who may show some possibilities of antagonizing their plans. They have a way of bringing them into their fold, either by voluntarily, by them seeing light, or by them disappearing. That is their method of operating. We are fortunate that the well-being of the peoples of the far north remains the least of their elite concerns. 12. We are fortunate that they are not like the Bamilekes, our imaginary enemies. 13. We must all do all we can to ensure that the Northerner does not come to power for at least 3 generations. So they are counting the generations. So there will be a time that they will let the Northerners to come to power. But mind you, the Bamileke case will never come to power. So it might be something that they have in their plan where it will be Bulu or Northerner. While the fear of Bamileke power is purely a tactic to maintain power, the fear of Northern power is real. And we must consider the possibility of Northern power as a serious peril. Although they've already said that they should not let it happen in 3 generations. So at least they're considering that it may happen. With regards to other citizens, Northerners must be perceived as being incapable of political and intellectual evolution. Sheep, to be more precise. But Isai Chiruma has shown us otherwise. He's shown us that he's a very smart man. He's outspoken. He's bilingual. And he has been in that family. Remember, he was locked up by Biya and then came back embraced. So he has seen the best and the worst. And that's why he was able to challenge the system and won, but not recognized. Election fraud, Article 17. Election fraud is the surest way. This is made possible by the absence of honor and dignity in Northerners. They don't have enough intelligence to be surprised that they vote 100% for us in some places, but their localities remain in total misery. We have to make this situation endure. So they're telling the Northerners that, you are not smart people. You will continue to vote for us, whether truthfully or untruthfully, whether by fraud in the ballot or otherwise, you will vote for us 100%. But we saw that this election that happened, there were some Northerners supposedly who voted for Biya, although the majority voted for Isa, but there were some who voted for Biya. What are the chances that there was just maybe 1 or 2% that voted for Biya, or perhaps none? Yet, we see that statistics showing that a significant number voted for Biya, although majority voted for Isa Chiruma. But they're saying in this document that they will continue this process of election fraud because that's the surest way to make sure that regardless of who runs for that election to be president, it doesn't matter because the outcome will always be the CPDM leader, Paul Biya. And we see that happening today. Everything must be done to ensure that the Northerners never realize that they will be the first beneficiary of far-reaching decentralization of federation. Even the last of them must be convinced that regime change will mean their downfall. Now, talking about regime change, when I was going through all those videos on CPDM, I was dumbfounded how some of our people from the Anglo-Saxon heritage that are in the CPDM choir will make this type of statement that they want to stick with Biya because with him there will be peace and stability in the country. Peace and stability. So they rather stick with somebody that they know than to venture out with an unknown person. But this is telling us that they want people to be convinced that a regime change, and that's what they are saying, will mean their downfall. Because if you believe, those who are going out voting, if they believe that, if we change who is the leadership, then this country will fall apart. That is already the CPDM strategy winning right there. We are aware of the evidence that the Bamili case, I'm reading about the Bamili case. Now, let me go about the Bamili case. Sorry. We must divide and oppose the Betty and Bamileke groups and do everything we can to put in to the heads of our people that their enemy is the Bamileke. We are aware of the evidence that the Bamilekes are the majority ethnic group in this country. But we will have to mask this reality by focusing the debate on the number of ethnic groups, 250, and talk about one group out of more than 200, which alone wants to dominate the others. So they're indirectly saying that because the Bamilekes are the majority, they make the majority of individuals from any ethnic groups, then putting them in a negative light because there are other ethnic groups will ensure that people will not want to have Bamileke as leaders. So this is that divide and rule mentality. You make people hate the Bamilekes, who are the majority of that ethnic groups in the country, so that in the long run, you don't see a Bamileke person being put as a president, which we experienced with Kamto. Every Cameroonian must see a suspect in every Bamileke that I'm reading on. We will lose power the day we stop fighting the flames of hatred of Cameroonians against Bamileke. Maintaining the myth of a Bamileke plot is imperative to the survival of our power. We must prevent the emergence of a political figure capable of uniting the will of the Bamileke. Kamto tried. He even won, but he was maneuvered by the system. But the thing that puzzles me is that even though the Bamileke are considered the majority, wasn't it possible for them to mobilize in such a way that they were able to cripple the economy? Because that's one way of shutting down the CPDM corrupt system that has plagued La République du Cameroon, and is also indirectly affecting Ambazonia, southern Cameroons. The Bamileke, with their masses and numbers, could have come out and plan, strategize to have some sort of economic disaster to cripple the country, so that in the long run, even the Betis, the Bulus, we see that if we don't have food coming into our stomachs because of a system that CPDM has put in place for so long, perhaps we look in another direction and support the Bamilekes. Well, that's just wishful thinking. We must prevent the emergence, I read this already. We must annihilate any individual from this community who dares to put himself forward politically, even if it means offending the international community. We must kill any political party that has the support of the Bamilekes, even if it means risking a tribal war or even a second Bamileke genocide. We will also use traitors in their own ranks to find them. So this is telling us that they probably have some Bamilekes, not probably, they have some Bamilekes that are in this CPDM stronghold that they have, corrupted, and these people cannot speak for themselves anymore. They cannot support their own people. They cannot rise against a system that is negative for their people. Now, let's talk about the Anglophones. this is where I want to really focus, the Anglophones. And let's consider this as people from the Anglo-Saxon heritage, those of us that were from the former British Southern Cameroons, to be specific. We know that they don't want secession, but to win big, we'll have to accuse them of separatism and terrorism. This phrase is kind of true and untrue. Yes, they are accusing us of terrorism. And when they say that we don't want secession, I'm not sure that this is really their intention of putting it this way, because we are Southern Cameroonians and Amazonians. From that October 1st that we gain our independence, and we're supposed to be a federation with East Cameroon, because then we're called West Cameroon. At that moment, we are already our own people, knowing that we have a history from way back when we're being governed, when we're governing ourselves in Enugu and finally left and came to Biya. So we had nothing whatsoever to do with French Cameroon, nothing whatsoever. So when they use the phrase, we know they don't want secession. No, we don't want secession in the sense that we are already our own people. La République is the one that seceded. They left that union with all those name changes and then finally become La République du Cameroun. You know, we're Federal Republic of Cameroon, the United Republic of Cameroon, and then La République, the Republic of Cameroon. So they are the ones who left the union that we supposedly had on October 1st, 1961. But it says, but to win big, we'll have to accuse them of but to win big, that they want to win big. So whatever they mean by we want to win big, because it's not just about power. Yes, they've put us like Prime Minister or President of the National Assembly or those titles that mean nothing, because we know that the power comes from the CPDM elite. They are the ones ruling the country. The other Anglophones are just figureheads. Article 25. We must do everything to ensure that their sense of rigor is perceived as leftism and ridiculed by other citizens. So, if people don't know their history, they may buy into this argument, because a common person out there who doesn't realize that Southern Cameroons had its own government before. Endele, Foncha, Joa Foncha, before. Now we have Sissoko, and then President Sako. Any Southern Cameroons who doesn't know the history of the three preceding leaders, the prime ministers, presidents, we can consider they were presidents, but in those days we would use the terminology prime ministers. Those who don't know that will really buy into this leftism suggestion. No, we are not leftists. We stand for the truth. And the truth is that we always had our land. We always had our boundaries. We always had our leader. We always have our people. We always had our culture, which is quite different from what is in French Cameroon or La République du Cameroun. Let me continue. It says, let's not forget that there are agreements between French and England by which the latter renounced its historical claims to English-speaking Cameroon. And other agreements would have been made between French-speaking Cameroon and France to ensure that no English-speaking would ever become president of that country. So here we go. It was with this in mind that Frundi's victory was hijacked in 1992 without England having having anything to say about it. So they are saying that there was this agreement already made between France and England. Yes, so we are a little gift from the Queen to France, and so that basically the Anglophones don't matter. That's what it's saying. Our voices don't count. We do not matter. But mind you, my brothers and sisters, that if we did not matter, we would not be standing tall today in defiance of who they are. They waged a war on us, thinking that in 1 or 2 weeks we'll be crumpled. They arrested our government, then government, led by Ayuk Tabe. We call them the Naira 10. They were arrested or adopted and kidnapped and taken to La République du Cameroon, I believe on the 5th of January 2018, when that happened, because they had in mind that if they cut the head of the snake would die. Now, if they had succeeded in that, meaning that if after that arrest and and the Naira 10 being kept in seclusion and nobody knowing knew what was going on, and we did not have an interim leadership coming up led by then interim president Samuel Komisako, then perhaps they would have succeeded. Because what would have become of this fight? And we know that this fight didn't just start now. We know about AA's All Anglophone Conference 1 and All Anglophone Conference 2. These were all steps getting to where we want to be separate. Because by their own admission, an Anglophone would never be president of that land. So why are you trying to stay with them? Those CPDMs that are still following the crumbs. And there are many of you. It's a shame. I'm talking about Southern Cameroonians that are CPDM members supporting the re-election of Biya. Let me read on. However, the fear of Anglophone revenge is not entirely insignificant. Anglophones complain of their marginalization, but with the support of France, the threat is less. So, do you know why this comes into play, the support of France? Remember that the cooperation agreement that was drafted between La République du Cameroun and France in December of 1959 had a few the Article 6 had a few provisions that I've gone through several times on this program. But the one that was added in November of 1961, I will just paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me. But that article in November of 1961 was put because of this plan to assimilate Southern Cameroons. In that article, it mentioned that if there were any problem with regards to people rebelling, people protesting against the government of La République du Cameroun, then France will send its military or will assist in quelling any opposition. Because they saw that eventually there will be opposition from Southern Cameroons, knowing that we had been lied to, knowing that the federation that we believe we were entering into was a fake one. And thank God, we repeat this over and over. There was no signed union between these two parties. There was no agreement in by signature. So that's why we were able to pull back. And that's why today we've restored our statehood as Southern Cameroons or Ambazonia. And we read on. It says, besides, God has destroyed the human race several times in order to rebuild it. So, in this war waged by our political party against Anglophone, the number of dead should not count. Only the active living count. So they are justifying in this, their CPDM Bible, that killing Anglophones is part of the game for them to stay in power. They justified it that God has destroyed the human race several times in order to rebuild it. So they are trying to destroy all Anglophones to rebuild a country where CPDM will always be the leadership, where no Anglophone will dare to question the system. But we are all gone. Now we are telling them that we're not part of their system anymore. Let me read on. We must avoid any form of pity for Anglophones on the part of Francophones. Like the Bamle case, Anglophones must be suspect in the eyes of every Francophone. I guess they succeeded in this because if you reflect, when the war was waged on us, you would think that majority of the Francophones would have come to our aid and supported us and said, these are our brothers and sisters that are being slaughtered for no reason, for just demanding the basics. Yet they were either zipped their mouth or they were still or part of the system. Way back, I'd always had that thought that if the Francophones had just come and joined the Anglophones, say, oh, our brothers and sisters, this is not what we want. We don't want you to be killed. Your villages burnt and razed. Because we consider you humans just like we are. What can we do to help? Perhaps it would have been a different system now, with the Anglophones working with the Francophones. But that did not happen. So we, people from Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, realize that we have to stick to ourselves. We can never be part of that system. Never, ever. If we want our children to have a future where they thrive, not one where they are second-class citizens or second status citizens, rather special status citizens, then we have to make sure that we understand what this CPDM thing is all about and realize that we will never be part of them. We have to be our own people. It says the element of English culture among Anglophones must disappear. Listen to this. The element of English culture among Anglophones must disappear, especially in the Northwest. What does that tell you? It tells you that they had a plan all along to dilute our culture. That's why they were sending their French-speaking teachers into all our English-speaking classrooms to ruin our children, because those kids, these are their molding age that they are growing and learning. When you learn the wrong thing, it sticks with you and it's difficult to relearn the right thing. And what they're learning that is wrong will always keep them at an inferior position. Because true knowledge is power. True knowledge is power. False knowledge, wrong knowledge, makes you inferior. And that's what they wanted for us. Anglophones in the Northwest are essentially Bamilikes, while those in the Southwest are Sawa and others. But we must prevent them from realizing this. Well, there's some truth to this, and there's some ill truth in the sense that we, as Southern Cameroonians, those of us who, when they had the divisions, remember that in 1972, that's when Paul Biya came with the nomenclature Southwest, Northwest. Before, we just had, for administrative purposes, West Cameroon, and it had Bamenda Division, Victoria Division, Cambe Division, and that's how it was administered. And we were our own people. We had our own culture. We had the people from Bali, people from Bafut, people from Meta, and so forth and so on. People from Bakwere, Bayangi, Lebialem, all those places where we had our own different ethnic groups, and we still do. But we were not really considered ourselves part of Bamilikes or Sawa. We had and we still have our own unique cultures. So I disagree with that statement. All right. Let's go to the political elite. We must ensure that the political elites of the other tribes are always illegitimate. To this end, we must ensure that anyone appointed to a position of responsibility represents his or her own ethnic groups, but never appoint someone who has the sympathy of his or her own people. Always appoint people who are hated by his or her own people. The appointment of, no, that is not even important. Article 38. The elected officials must be illegitimate. To achieve this, we must, even within our own ranks, favor the victory of less popular so that they owe their victory to us. There is no surer way to win loyalty. From the head of a department to the minister, we must never appoint anyone who has political support except by our own making. So they have this system in place where they appoint people that they can control, people that have no loyalty to their people, but will have loyalty to the CPDM leadership. And that's how they've been able to maintain this forever. Sometimes it's shocking that you will see somebody like Philomen Yang, for example, really coming out, supporting people to mobilize and go vote for Biya, telling them how he's good for us. Now, let me go into development, because this will be connected as I finally go towards the end of this program. Development. The desire to enrich oneself has led to embezzlement of public funds and a very unbalanced development of the country. So you have individuals there that they have appointed, whose goal is that once we get into that position, let's do our best to embezzle as much money as we can, knowing that we may not be there for a long time. The development of the country is not our priority, because that's been the case forever. So let's just get in there, have some few lip services talk, sometimes pretend to our people that we're doing something good for them. Meanwhile, nothing is happening. It says today the Bamileke areas are at an unacceptable level of development. We have an obligation to slow down this development. To do so, we must appoint special sub-prefect whose mission will be to destabilize the development committees that are swarming there. So you're saying that, let's say the place in Biya, for example, if you have a bunch of Southern Cameroonians who have so much money that decide to go there to develop a certain area, to improve the system where you have jobs, opportunities for people, this document says that they will cripple that effect. They will cripple that so that it never happens. So that you keep the people poor and looking for crumbs. But you have some key people that are there that have the advantage of eating the money of the people, have the advantage of making sure that the people have no future. Because when you do that, the power stays with the elite CPDM from generation to generation. It continues about development. For example, if they want to build drinking water points, we'll define the administrative procedures that will force them to abandon the projects. So they are saying that, in effect, any person or group that wants to bring development in any part, being in Bamileke regions, being in the south, in our Anglophone areas, they must be frustrated to the extent that they will leave that project and run away. And that has happened for decades now. That's why we have had so many talented Sarun Kamunyans gone home to implement things that they've learned, yet they were frustrated to leave those plans, abandon them completely, and return to the diaspora. The army and the judiciary. The nerve centers must be held by us. It's enough to place a few other tribes in impressive positions, but define the role so that the second in command, who must be one of us, holds the real power. So you have a situation where the first in command looks like an outsider. So they are putting Anglophone, they are putting some Bamileke in this high position. But the second in command is a CPDM member who is the one that is calling the shots. That is their plan all along. Finally, education. No one should forget that the destiny of a people is the fruit of its education system. We must lower the quality of our country's schools and send our children to study in countries with good education system. They will come back to run the country with sure peace of mind. Under the guise of education for all, we need to make schools cheaper but lower their quality. This will avoid harmful intellectual competition. So, and that is one of the reasons that in 2016, the teachers and lawyers went on a strike, because they saw this. It was so obvious that our schools were just diluted to the worst possible scenario, where kids were learning garbage in these fundamental ages that they have. 5 years, 6 year old, 7, 10, 12, were learning garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. So in the long run, if you have people, their own people that are sent to the best schools to get the best education, of course, they come back as the intellectuals and as the rulers, and they continue this CPDM game where they are the rulers. So as I end today's program, I want to ask this question, that those who really voted for this CPDM leader to continue in this tradition, what do they think he can do for La République du Cameroon when he has been in office for more than 4 decades and has not achieved anything? Let me read this so people understand where I'm going to. To determine if a country is doing well, there are certain indices that must be considered. I have something written down and I don't know where I kept it, but let me see if I will remember. To decide if a country is doing well, some parameters have to be examined. So you need to evaluate the economic, social, and infrastructure indicators. So economically, you look at indices like the gross domestic product, the GDP. You look at what the economy is like. Is it diversified? How is the service sector like? Socially, you look at literacy rate, you look at employment rate, you look at life expectancy rate, you look at standard of living, you look at the income, distribution of income, whether it's high or low. You look at also the infrastructure, technology, the quality of infrastructure, the access to healthcare and education. You look into all this. So, for Cameroon, it is clear that Cameroon has is a low income country. There are a few that have grabbed majority of the income. So you have a few very wealthy people, but the majority are poor. So the rate of poverty is extremely high in Cameroon. There's also what is called a low human development index. Cameroon's high HGI score is low, placing it as a very poor developing country. There's also limited access to services. The country struggles with insufficient healthcare system and educational system, with a literacy rate. It was about 71% in 2010. Remember that when Ahidjo was in office, that's one thing that Ahidjo did. Ahidjo was a strong proponent for education. In fact, he was big at giving scholarships for people to go study abroad, and even those who were in the country. Economically, economic growth has not reduced poverty. Despite the claim that they say there's economic growth, let's think about it. Things that you see, look at your roads in Cameroon. Look at your roads. Look at your markets, those obvious places that you frequent. The markets are dirty, filthy. The roads are impassable. They have other things like, in fact, the roads are so poor that it limits access for markets by farmers and hinders overall development. You have corruption that is widespread. That's one thing you see also in such in a country that is not developed. There's so much corruption that those who want to stay on top, to continue to be wealthy, are trying to get the most of the money for themselves, and they don't care about the majority. So I bring all this to say that people who really stood out there to vote for this CPDM leader to continue in this doctrine, in this process where there will always be a CPDM, despite of what is going on in the country. Do you have any souls? And I'm going to address this to our brothers and sisters that are of British Southern Cameroon's heritage, that were campaigning for Biya to be president. Were you poisoned? Has your mind been poisoned in this system that you don't know truth from lies? Because you go out there and push for someone who is not even the one making the decisions. We know that Paul Biya, 92-year-old Paul Biya, who's going to be a president now for another 7 years. Mind you, his family has longevity. I think the sister lived to be 1 or something. So it will not surprise us if Paul Biya lives for another 10, 15 years. So that means that in 7 years from now, when he's 99, what will prevent him from being president again if he's president now? Because you guys have that mentality that because of him, there's peace. What peace are you talking about? There's a war in southern Cameroon's Ambazonia where Paul B has killed more than 60,000 of your people. Now, I'm really directing this to those elites that are from southern Cameroon's Anglophone elites that are in support of this CPDM mafia. You've really sold your soul to the devil, because there's nothing that this person or this family or this Biya CPDM cabal would do to improve the quality of life of Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians. But mind you, we are not part of them anymore. So you stick with them, or you rebel and find yourself back in Southern Cameroon and ask for your people's forgiveness. Because I don't know how you sleep at night. I don't want to call names, but you know yourselves. Any of you who went out there campaigning for Paul Biya, any of you guys can just go on YouTube and Google. There are so many of you who were out there campaigning for this guy. Someone who doesn't have his senses up there. You're there campaigning for him to be president of your country. Shame on you. Really, shame on you. But I will end the program today. I want to say thank you for being on the horizon, the voice of the urban woman. I just want people to understand that this CPDM strategy to conserve power for the generations to generation is their playbook, and they will continue to do that. So for those of you who are Bamilekes, if you're watching this program, or Northerners which are watching this program, it's up to you to make sure that it doesn't happen. We Southern Cameroonians, we are not part of your system. We've already told the world that based on the fact that we were granted independence in 1961, and the union that we had was destroyed by Abiedu, followed by Biya. That means that we've left that union. Or let me say it the other way. You guys left the union. So we are standing on our grounds that we are an independent people and have to run our own affairs. So my people, Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, continue to be watchful. Just find a way to learn the truth. If you have access to our history, read our history to realize that knowledge is power. Don't get dragged into this game that they have, thinking that they can pull you to be part of them. You are not. The chances that you will survive, you will thrive in the Southern Cameroonians are much greater than you will ever in La République du Cameroun. So I want to thank you for watching the program today, and we'll be back next week, hopefully with an exciting guest. And keep safe. Make sure that you don't participate in anything that is happening with La République du Cameroun, because you know where you belong, and whatever they do is their problem, and you should never be part of it. Stay safe. Make sure that you get enough food and water to be in your own communities, to live as safe as you can. And want to thank our ASA for continue to protect our land, continue to protect our territory, and make sure that La Republic really has no right to do anything in our land. Thank you, and till next week, have a great weekend.